welcome to Let's Talk About It with Ololade and Olusola. I am a certified marriage coach and I'm here with my husband, a certified life transformation coach. You are?
My name is Olusolas. I'm a certified life transformation coach, and I talk about marriage and relationships with my wife, Ololade. And
Yes.
It's good to be here.
It's good to be here. And this episode today, we are talking about 19 lessons you have learned in 19 years. I've been married to my darling husband for 19 years. How has it been for 19 years?
It's not been perfect. And we also have to know that no marriage is perfect.
Right.
But nevertheless, it's something that I've enjoyed. I won't trade being married to you for anything else or for anyone else in this world. And there are various reasons for that. First and foremost, you understand me perfectly. And once you have a woman that understands you, then you can go to bed and sleep.
Awesome. Thank you for that. How has it been like being married to my husband for 19 years? It has been an adventure, unconditional love, kindness, and of course, God being at the center of our marriage. But we're just going to go straight into business about the 19 lessons. And we hope that, as you watch this episode, you are really blessed. And of course, you learn so many things to make your marriage work. So the first thing I'm going to say is the first lesson I learned in these 19 years is to marry your friend. And a lot of people hear me say that all the time, especially when I'm speaking, that it's important that you marry your friend. And you're not walking around eggshells. When you marry your friend, when your relationship transitions from love to friendship or from friendship to love to marriage and family life, that's the most beautiful thing, you can ever have in your marriage. So it's important that you marry somebody that you are very comfortable with, someone that you can laugh with, you can cry with, you can pray with, someone that is just your friend. You know how your friend is. Your friend is your friend. There's nothing you can't share with your friend, I think that's the first lesson I would like to share today. So, yeah.
All right, thank you so much, and I'm happy that I'm your friend.
Awesome.
Now, the first thing I'm going to say is that marriage is the coming together of two forgivers, which means that if you don't know how to forgive, or you are not used to forgiving, then you don't have any business getting married. You know why? You will step on each other's toes. You will offend each other. But the beauty is in being able to forgive and to move on. And there might be times, or rather, there have been times when I've offended my wife. There have been times when my wife has offended, when we've hurt each other. But what has kept us going is that ability to forgive. And not just to forgive, and not also to make mention of whatever happened again. So marriage is the coming together of two forgivers, because forgiveness is one of the expressions of love. So if you can forgive, then it simply means that you are ready to get married.
Awesome. If you can forgive, that means you are ready to get married. And if you cannot forgive, you have no business with the institution of marriage. That's very, very important. My own second lesson is you cannot force your ideas on people, even if it is very good. So there's something we all say, very funny, be guided. So it's important that you know that you're going to see the weaknesses of your spouse, you're going to see the strengths of your spouse, you're going to see everything. When the Bible says that being naked, I was naked, I was not ashamed. You see your emotions, your spouse's emotions. I've seen my husband's emotions. I've seen him at the lowest times of his life in this past 19 years. I've seen him at the highest time of his life. But you can't force your ideas. You can't force the things that you see on your spouse. You can only encourage. You can only convince. And I remember at the beginning of my marriage, I tried to do that, especially when I saw something that was good for my spouse. I tried to make them, force them to see what I was saying. But over time, I've come to sit back, relax, and just let my spouse, my husband, go on his own journey. So that's the second lesson for me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lada. You can't force what you think is right on your spouse.
Yeah.
Especially if they are not seeing it from your point of view, which is very, very important. And that brings me to my own second point. Honesty and transparency in marriage They are non-negotiable. Because any marriage that is not built on honesty, that is not built on transparency, you are opening cracks in the wall. And eventually that wall is going to crash. So in these 19 years, my wife knows everything about me. I know everything about my wife. No, all our passwords are known to each other because there's nothing to hide. As a matter of fact, our children know all my passwords because I have nothing to hide. So I know my wife's passwords to her phone, not because I want to be spying on who she's chatting with, but because there's nothing to hide. You see, the moment you start hiding, right? The moment you have to go somewhere to pick your calls, you are blocking the screen of your phone, it means you have something to hide.
Exactly.
And it means that honesty and transparency have been compromised. So for a marriage that will last, especially for us in these last 19 years, honesty, transparency, there are things that we have practiced, we are still practicing, and we will still keep practicing because they are good for every marriage that will last the test of time.
Exactly, they are good for every marriage. And I'll add to that. I remember a time we had gone to a multi shop, and the attendant wanted me to pay, and so I used I collected my husband's card and I swept my husband's card. And he now gave my husband the he now gave my husband the POS or the card what to insert his his password. And I said, come on, bring it. And he was like, oh, wow, you know your husband's password. I'm like, of course, there's really nothing to hide. And that's how it has been in the 19 years. All right, so another lesson I've learned in the past 19 years is that marriage changes your perspective for life. And I remember when I was getting married, I think then, 19 years ago, I was like 25 years old, going to be 26. And, I can't imagine that the same thoughts, the same ideas, I had then as a young, person is the same idea I have now. Marriage has changed a lot about me. It changed my perspective about life, changed my perspective about legacy, changed my perspective about, how I see things. I always now have to share my ideas with my husband. I have to roll things with him to be sure that I'm on the right path for, advice and all that. So marriage changes, and it's not all that. Having a child, having children, has changed perspective. Having to love your in-laws like your own siblings. Marriage has changed so many things about me, and I'm grateful for all the experiences I've gone through.
All right, yeah, it's true that marriage has actually changed so many things about you and about me too. So, in marriage, you can no longer go solo. It's no longer about you, it's about the two of you. So, which I think is a good introduction for my next point, which is about always put your spouse first. Always put your spouse first in marriage. Now, we ask a lot of people that when it comes to the commitment in marriage, that what percentage should be for each person. And you hear a lot of people saying 50-50 because they have that idea that two halves are getting married. No, it's not two halves that are getting married. It is two old people. But by a divine mathematics, the two old numbers, they still remain old after coming together. So when you realize this, you come to that conclusion that marriage is not 50-50. Marriage is 100%. Wife 100%, husband 100%. And you see, once this comes into your thinking, you will always put your wife first. So whenever I'm taking a decision, what is at the back of my mind is how will this decision affect my wife? What will be the impact of this decision on my wife? So it's never about me. It's always my wife first. Every decision I take, everything I do, it's always my wife first. You know why? Because the two have become one. And that's why if you love yourself, it will be easy for you to love your wife and always put her first in everything. So, marriage is not a call to selfishness, it's a call to selflessness. Always putting your wife first in everything and in every way. And that is one of the keys to total peace in marriage.
Right, and that the truth is that's part of the reason why I love my husband so much. He's always putting us first, the children and I, always thinking of us first. If somebody gives my husband 100 naira, for example, or $100, my husband will say, "You guys can have 90. I'll be fine with 10." And that brings me to my next lesson in marriage. You have to be financially productive. Finances, of course, we're going to talk about that in subsequent episodes and subsequent series. But it's important that you have something that you are doing as a means of livelihood, no matter how small. And we have all those arguments because of our culture, especially in this part of the world. People don't want their wives to work. Some people just want their wives to maintain the home without earning, but they don't think of the future. They don't think of their legacy. Yes, some people can cater for that, but it's important that even if you are a housewife or you're staying at home, you have something productive you are investing in as a means of income. And that is very important because life in itself is going to demand that from you, is going to demand that for us. So it's important that we are financially productive. Subsequently in the episode, you hear a story, but I can imagine if there was any time in our life that there was no, what happened when we didn't have finances to run our home, it was so depressing. So it's important that, as you grow in marriage, you are growing financially. The demands of marriage will ask you that, whether you are conscious of it or not. Yeah.
And like I always tell people, romance is ROMANCE. And I always tell people that CE in romance
Yes,
is from
sir.
finances.
Yes, sir.
So finances makes your marriage much more romantic.
Yes,
And
sir.
which brings me to another point. Never ever speak ill of your spouse to
That's another
anyone.
lesson.
Don't ever do it. Don't ever do it. You know why? The moment you start speaking ill of your spouse in front of people, you are taking away her respect. You are taking away her power. You are taking away her dignity and honor. And then you are opening the door to people to disrespect her. So never, ever, ever speak ill of your wife or your husband to anyone. So when my wife offends me, or I offend my wife, it's a rule. What happens between us stays between us. You understand? But that I'll ever go somewhere and my wife is this, my wife is that. No, don't ever do that because you are disrespecting that woman. Yeah. The least you owe your wife, the least you owe your husband is respect, personal respect. And as long as you respect your wife, nobody can disrespect her. So never ever speak ill of your spouse to anyone, no matter what happens.
Yeah, never speak ill of it, no matter what happens. I would also like to ask about that. Yes, you can actually talk about your spouse to a confidant, a counselor, a mentor. That will lead your spouse. We'll talk about that later on this, episode on this show about accountability. But most importantly, do not spoil your spouse. Do not pull down your spouse in the midst of other people. So, that brings me to the next lesson. And I hope you're enjoying our lessons because we want you to implement them. That's why we are sharing them. All right. So I think that brings me to my next lesson I learned in marriage in the past 19 years. And I think that is that model what you want your spouse to do. In the past 19 years, I've realized that talk less and act more. We as women, we are quick to say and talk and talk and talk. But as you understand your spouse, as you grow, better in your marriage, realize that sometimes it's just okay for you to model what you want your spouse to become or want your spouse to do. And I'll give a practical example. I remember a time that I was telling my husband, I want him to, just be here for the children and all that. My husband has always been a fantastic husband, but what I was trying to say to him at that time, he was just like, okay. So I started to do it with the kids, and he was like, oh, this is amazing, and he joined us. So it's important that you model what whatever you want your spouse to do or say.
Yeah, very true. You practice what you preach.
Right.
19 years has been such. It looks like a long time. But spending it with my wife is a very short time.
Right.
Because I always look forward to each day. And that brings me to another point, right? Understand that you and your spouse are different. Your wife is different from you. You are different from your wife. For example, Lolade is an extrovert. I'm an introvert. However, we complement each other. So you don't expect your wife to see things from your perspective, and you don't expect your husband to always see things from your own perspective. You are totally different. As a matter of fact, if you and your wife are the same, your marriage might just be boring. So you and your wife, you and your husband, you are totally different, and you must respect that. So for example, when it comes to processing information, what we call representational systems, my wife is a visual person. She doesn't learn except, the most dominant part of her in the way you communicate with her is by what she sees. So my wife looks at a flyer and sees 30 colors and I see one. So if you want to communicate with my wife, you have to do it based on what she can see.
Pictures.
For me, based on pictures, for me, it has to be what makes sense, auditory, digital. So understand that your spouse is different from you, and most importantly, accept those differences. You will never be the same. So a lot of problems in marriage come when people try to change their spouse. Accept the differences and respect the differences, that you and your spouse, you are not the same and you'll never be the same.
Right, you're not the same. It took me time to know that. Because I'm always like, why doesn't he like my music loud? Why doesn't he, And I'm like, hey, why be different? But opposite attracts, and I guess that's why we married in the first place. So appreciate that, appreciate that your spouse can help you see life from a different perspective. All right, so I think now we should be moving to like the 6 lessons each on each side. But another thing is communication is the lifeline. Communication is the lifeline of this marriage, of our marriage. You need to talk about it. That's exactly what you're doing here. You have to learn to communicate. I know my husband is a Manchester United fan. When they win, perfect time to communicate to my husband, to tell him something that I've always wanted to share. So you need to be able to understand your husband and know the best time to communicate. When they just had a business idea that didn't go well, it's not a time to come and nag and tell him about things that is not working wrong. You made a mistake. You need to understand. We did a survey some time ago in our business, in our marriage and family life company, and we saw that communication was number one. People want to know how to communicate hard things to their spouse. So it's important that we learn our spouse's communication style. We learn, there are spouse's representation systems. We're going to talk about that a lot on this channel. You know exactly how to communicate with your spouse. So that's another lesson.
All right. Communication is powerful, and until your spouse understands what you are saying, you've not communicated. Now, another thing I've learned in 19 years of marriage is that you are not perfect, and your wife is not perfect. Neither of you is perfect, and neither of you will ever be perfect. So a lot of people have gone into marriage with expectations of perfection, and then they find out that it's lacking. So you are not perfect. You will make mistakes. Your wife will make mistakes. Both of you will make mistakes, and you must learn to accept that. There is nothing like a perfect husband. There's nothing like a perfect wife, and there's nothing like a perfect marriage.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, you, the husband, you are a work in progress. The wife is a work in progress. The marriage in its entirety, it's a work in progress. So accept that your wife is not perfect, and that you too, you are not perfect. You will make mistakes. But the most important thing is that when mistakes are made, you accept them and you learn from them on your way to making things much better in your marriage.
All right, yes, you accept that, we all make mistakes, and we accept them and we try to do better. That's very key. All right, so my next lesson that I learned in my 19 years of marriage is that when you have children, because a lot of us talk about marriage, what we don't know, marriage takes us to legacy, marriage takes us to a new generation, marriage takes you to family life. I think when we begin to understand that we have an assignment to build the next generation, we'll take our marital choices, we take them more seriously. But most importantly, your children are going to do what you do, not necessarily what you say. So whatever you are showing your children right now, whatever example you are giving your children, is exactly what they are going to become. So a lot of us grew up with, with people telling us what to do without doing it. But as we grew up in this 19 years, we are grateful to God that our children are doing what they see us doing, which we are very, very happy about. Yeah.
Very, very important points. Children learn by observation. It's not do as I say,
Please do as I
but do as I do.
Right.
And then that brings me to another lesson I've learned in 19 years of marriage. You must be deliberate and intentional about creating time for romance and intimacy. So you find out that when you are in courtship, the fire is burning very, very hot. But as soon as people get married, the fire starts going down. You know why? Because they have stopped doing the things they used to do.
Right.
So when you get married, that's not the time to tone down on romance and intimacy. That's the time to actually increase it. Now, you can't pray your way into romance. You can't pray your way into intimacy. You create time for it. So no matter how busy you are, you must find time for romance and intimacy, because that is the fire, that is the petrol that keeps the marriage burning, that keeps it glowing. So your wedding bed must always be on fire. There must be time for romance and intimacy. It is non-negotiable. And you see why it's important is this: if you don't create that time for romance and intimacy, someone else might do it for you.
Yep.
And that will not be palatable. So create time consciously, deliberately and intentionally for romance and intimacy in marriage.
Yes, great time for romance and intimacy. Great time to enjoy yourselves together. Enjoy life. Enjoy life together. Go out. Hey. And all right, so that takes me to my own next lesson that I've learned in the past 19 years. Marriage comes with its own challenges. So a lot of people, when they are dating, fire in my bones, butterflies in my stomach, all those things. It's good though. But the reality of family life, of marriage, is that marriage comes with its own challenges. And you are marrying, the truth of it is you are marrying somebody that is a stranger that keeps growing every day, that you have to grow together. So there are challenges that you both will face in marriage. And it's important that you have that, mindset of coming together and solving your challenges together, working to ensure that you are together, in your ideas, in your mind, and just making sure that you solve your problems together, your challenge, because the challenges will come. They will come in marriage, and they come from every angle, and there's no timetable to the challenges of life. So it's important that you put that in perspective, right?
Yeah, thank you so much, Vale. Marriage is not a bed of roses. There will be challenges, but the most important thing is that challenges are there to be overcome. Now, this brings me to my 7th point, right? Do not withhold information from your spouse. Share every necessary information with your spouse as and when due. Do not let your wife find out information that you should have shared from an outside party. Do not let your wife find out information that you should have shared with her from a third party. Those are the things that lead to cracks in marriage. There must be full disclosure. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow in your marriage. Never, ever, ever withhold any information from your wife. You know why? Once you start withholding information from your wife, it means that you are hiding something.
Right.
Once you start withholding information from your wife, it will start affecting the trust quotient of your marriage.
Right.
And those are the little things that lead to distrust. So every information, the ones your wife asks for, the ones she doesn't ask for, that you feel it's necessary for her to know, please share it with them. Because once you don't disclose something to your wife and she finds out from a third party, you start sowing the seeds of distrust. So never ever withhold any information from your spouse.
Right. Never ever withhold any information from your spouse. It also breeds trust. When your husband tells you everything, and when you also tell your husband everything, it removes any form of doubt. Nobody can come and say this person said, that person said, because people will come and say all sorts. What you say, I know my wife, I know my husband. He doesn't keep anything from me. So yeah, even when you make mistakes, you should remember we started with friendship. You should be able to talk to your husband, your wife about that. And I think this should be my own eighth or ninth. Anyways, the ninth, my final, like before we share one together, will be, of course, marriage is a God-given assignment. Marriage is hard work. Marriage is partnership with another person to build a new generation. That is hard work. That is work. A lot of us just say, I'm getting married, without studying, without understanding what we are doing. So it's important for us to know that marriage is a God-given assignment. You are going into work. You are going to build new lives, to build new generations. So you are going to be answerable to that. It's important that you understand that when you're making this decision. We found that in marriage, but we are advising based on the lessons that we have learned in the 19 years. We are going to do some work there in marriage.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brother. Marriage is hard work, but it's work that you are going to enjoy if you are willing to do it. And then that brings me to my second to the last point. You see, whatever you do in marriage, we must realize that we are preparing our children for marriage. Right? So everything we do in a marriage, it's an auditioning for our children. Because you know why? The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So whatever your children see you do, what you are telling them more or less is that that's the way marriage should be.
Right.
So I've seen a lot of, we've seen a lot of people go into marriage, right, beating their spouses. And you ask them that, where did you learn this from? They said, that's what I saw my dad do to my mom. That's what I saw my mom do to my dad. Talking down on their spouses at every given opportunity. And you ask them that, where did you learn this? I learned it from my parents. Because whatever you allow your children to see you do, you are telling them that that is the way marriage should be. So be careful about what you do in front of your children, because whatever they see you do, you are telling them that that's the way marriage should be. Remember this stuff we had about toothpaste. The wife said the toothpaste should be pressed from the bottom. Right. The husband said it should be pressed from the top. And then, one day the wife pressed it from the bottom, and the husband got angry and hit his wife. And it was like, that's how I saw my dad also hit my mom. So please, everyone listening, whatever you don't want your children to do in marriage, please don't do the same thing, because everything you do is a training for them on how marriage should be.
Awesome. But you said second to the last. That's your last point.
Okay, that's my last point. Because, we are going to take the last point together.
Okay.
Yes. And the last point, the 19th point that we've learned in 19 years of beautiful marriage is that let God be the rock and the foundation of your marriage. You know why? I'm going to allow Lade to talk. You know why? Every other thing you build your marriage on, it can and will crash. God is the rock of ages that never moves. Every other thing will move. But when you build your marriage on God, that immovable rock, then you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, and as Christians, that also involves us just focusing on Him to be able to help us in difficult times. A lot of people talk about the happy times. People come and share about what works, but I see we're in a generation that wants to know what happens when things don't go as planned. We have our story about our relationship up on this channel. You can watch it. That we did a masterclass. We told our story of failure, of and it's important that in those seasons, it is only God that keeps the marriage together, because at that time you just want to either take a break or step out, or you begin to think, why did I marry this person? All kinds of things, thoughts will just be flowing in your mind. But Jesus is the anchor, is the one that holds us all together and says, you know what, you are here for business, you are here for purpose, you are here on assignment. So it's important that we put that in the center. We end with that. We let you know that, see, without God in your marriage, my dear, I don't know how you are going to survive, because that's what has helped us in this past 19 years. So yes, I think you've enjoyed this first episode. I would love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your comments. Really love to hear your suggestions for us to do on this beautiful show that we just started. And we are praying that as as you drop those comments, of course we're going to be reading and I'm going to take in action. And of course, don't forget to share with somebody you love so that we can, let's talk about it.
All right, and it's a prayer that your marriage is going to work.
Yeah.
It's going to grow from strength to strength,
Amen.
and you are going to enjoy that marriage all the days of your life. And people will look at your marriage and learn from it.
Yeah, we'll learn from it. So I love you.
I love you too.
All right. Bye.